In May of 1879, on a wind-scoured spit of sand at Sandy Hook, New Jersey, a marksman from the Springfield Armory named R.T. Hare set a .45-70 rifle into a rest, cranked the barrel to nearly 30 degrees of elevation, and fired at a target a full 2 miles downrange. The bullet stayed airborne for roughly 21 seconds, long enough to draw a breath and let it out. When it came down, a single 500-grain slug of soft lead punched clean through 3 1-inch boards of pine and spruce and drove 8 inches into the sand behind them. 3,500 yards, a target the Army measured in dozens of feet, struck on purpose, at a distance most modern hunting rifles cannot even hold a scope steady against. That is the legend of the .45-70 government. The buffalo gun. The cartridge that rode west with the cavalry, that closed out the Indian Wars, that helped strip 60 million bison off the plains. Every word of it is true. It is also the most expensive piece of mythology on the gun counter today, because the cartridge that did that on the sand at Sandy Hook is not the cartridge sitting in the $60 box at the sporting goods store. The round that earned the reputation and the round that gets sold on the strength of it are two different animals, separated by a single number that appears nowhere on the packaging. A number almost no one who buys the ammunition will ever be told exists. This is Hunt Forge. Today, 2 American legends go on the bench. The .45-70 government, born 1873, built on the physics of mass. The .3030 Winchester, born 1895, built on the physics of speed. Both still in production in 2026. Both still chambered in lever guns. Both still carried into the timber by people who trust them with the whole season. The marketing will tell you one of them is a man's cartridge and the other is a boy's. The marketing is selling you a story. And the story is going to cost you money. Here is the number. SAMI, the body that sets the pressure standards every American ammunition maker loads to, rates the .30-30 Winchester to a maximum average chamber pressure of 42,000 pounds per square inch. It rates the mighty .45-70 government to 28,000. Read that twice. The skinny little deer cartridge your grandfather kept behind the truck seat runs 50% more pressure than the cartridge sold as a buffalo stopper. The weak one is the hot rod. The powerful one is throttled down to idle. Why? Because the .45-70 is 150 years old, and the rifle it was born in is still out there. When the Springfield Armory designed the round in 1873, the trapdoor rifle that fired it ran somewhere around 19,000 to 25,000 psi on a hinged breech block from the wrought iron age. Tens of thousands of those rifles, plus a century of replicas and shot-out originals, are still passed down, still loaded, still fired every fall. A modern ammunition company has no way of knowing whether the box of .45-70 it ships will go into a stout new Marlin 1895 or into a great-grandfather's trapdoor with a bore like a sewer pipe. So it loads to the floor. Every standard pressure .45-70 on the shelf is deliberately handcuffed to keep it from coming apart in a rifle older than every other gun in your safe by a century. The men who actually built and loaded these cartridges understood this exactly. Colonel Townsend Whelen, United States Army Ordnance Officer, commanding officer of Frankford Arsenal, and one of the most cited ballistics authorities this country ever produced, with the better part of half a century behind a rifle, spent his career documenting the gap between what a cartridge could do and what it was safely allowed to do in the guns of its day. For the .45-70, that allowed number was always a treaty signed with its own past. So here is the truth no box will print. The .45-70 you can walk out the door with is not the .45-70 of legend. It is the version engineered not to hurt a man holding a museum piece. And you are paying a premium for the restraint. This is where the legend reaches into your wallet. Walk into any shop and ask which round hits harder, and you will be steered to the .45-70 and a chart full of enormous numbers. Heavy hard-cast loads from specialty houses like Buffalo Bore and Garrett will throw a 405 or 430 grain bullet at velocities approaching 2,000 feet per second and generate north of 3,500 foot-pounds of muzzle energy out of a lever gun. That is genuinely staggering. It is .3006 energy and beyond, out of a cartridge designed before the telephone. It is also almost entirely beside the point for the man buying a deer rifle, because those are the plus P loads, the boutique loads, the ones that cost $3 to $5 per trigger pull, that beat a light rifle like a mule, and that a tired old trapdoor must never, ever see. They are not what comes in the standard $60 box. Pull the actual numbers on the ammunition most hunters actually carry. A standard 300 grain factory .4570 leaves the muzzle around 1,850 feet per second for roughly 2,000 to 2,200 foot-pounds. Now look at the cartridge it supposedly humiliates. A modern .3030, the hottest factory load made, the Hornady Lever Evolution, runs a 160 grain bullet at 2,400 feet per second for about 2,046 foot-pounds at the muzzle. That is not a humiliation, that is a tie. The dirty secret of the standard pressure .4570 is that it makes almost exactly the same muzzle energy as the .330 it's supposed to tower over. And it was always going to, because that is precisely how the .3030 was engineered. When Winchester introduced the round in 1895, the entire design brief was to match the muzzle energy of the original black powder .4570 in a package that weighed less, kicked less, and shot flatter. The .3030 hit that mark on day one. At standard pressure, the two cartridges have been energy twins for 130 years. Elmer Keith, the Idaho cattleman who spent a lifetime proving big, heavy bullets work, who drove the development of the .357 and .44 Magnum, who never met a big bore he wouldn't defend in print, was right about the thing the velocity crowd hated to admit. A fat, heavy bullet kills out of all proportion to its number on a chart. But even Keith would tell you it cuts both ways. The .4570's real advantage was never the standard pressure energy printed on the box. It was diameter and mass and what those do at bad breath range. Pay for energy you don't actually get, and you've been sold a number, not a knife. Stand at that counter long enough, and you will hear it, delivered as gospel by a man who has never once tested it. The .4570 is a brush gun. A bullet that heavy and that slow, the story goes, will bull straight through twigs and branches and still flatten the buck behind them, while a skinny fast bullet blows up on the first sapling. It is one of the most durable lies in American hunting. And it was dragged out, put against a target with a chronograph, and buried decades ago, by a man whose name still outweighs any forum in the country. Jack O'Connor, shooting editor of Outdoor Life for roughly 31 years from the early 1940s into the 1970s, the most influential American gun writer of the entire 20th century, ran a deliberate brush deflection test and published the results in the October 1957 issue. He fired a spread of cartridges through brush and measured what came out the other side. His conclusion put the myth in the ground. No bullet reliably busts brush. The factors that wreck a bullet's path through cover, O'Connor documented, are sharp points, fragile construction, high velocity, an unstable shape, a fast spin rate, and lightweight. The factors that help are blunt points, moderate velocity, strong construction, a stable form, and a slow spin. Now look hard at that second list. It is a near-perfect description of the .4570 and the .3030. So there is a kernel of truth buried inside the lie. The heavy, slow, blunt lever gun bullet does deflect somewhat less than a screaming little Spitzer. But less is a country mile from immune. Modern testing has only confirmed the old man's work. Fire a 300 grain .45-70 through a few hardwood strips and it clips, tumbles, and walks off the target like everything else. There is no magic bullet. Physics does not care what you paid for the box. So why does the .4570 genuinely deserve its crown in the thick stuff? Not because the bullet ignores wood. That part is pure marketing. It earns the title because a short lever gun comes up fast in a tangle of timber, and because a 400-grain slug, put in the right place, anchors an animal where it stands instead of letting it run off to die in a thicket you will never reach. The cartridge is honest. The story stacked on top of it is not. Set the myths down and look at the only thing that has ever actually mattered. What happens when the bullet reaches the animal? Here, the two cartridges aren't rivals at all. They are two different centuries of thinking about how to kill. The .3030 is the 20th century answer. A 150 or 170 grain soft point arrives at better than 2,000 feet per second and kills by expansion. The nose mushrooms, the bullet roughly doubles its frontal diameter, and it carves a wound channel wider than the hole it punched on the way in. Inside 200 yards on deer-sized game, it is devastatingly effective, and 100 years of full freezers is the proof. But the whole mechanism leans on one event. The bullet has to open. Drive a .30 caliber bullet into heavy shoulder bone and fail to get expansion, and you have made a .30 caliber hole and nothing more. The .4570 is the 19th century answer, and it never needed the 20th century's trick. A 400-grain hard-cast flat nose leaves a standard load around 1,300 feet per second and kills by mass momentum and a face nearly half an inch across. It does not expand. It does not need to. The hole it makes going in is already wider than what most expanding bullets open up to. Put that slug into the onside shoulder of a black bear, and it breaks the shoulder, drives the full length of the chest, breaks the offside shoulder, and exits into the dirt. It is not elegant. It is a hammer following a straight line through everything in its way. Here is the honest way to hold the two up side by side. When everything goes right, the .3030 is more gun than a deer needs, and the .4570 is overkill that wrecks meat. But when something goes wrong, a quartering angle, a heavy bone, a bullet that won't open, the floor under the .4570 is simply higher, because a bullet that starts at .45 caliber and never depends on expansion has a smaller worst case. That is the real trade, not raw power. Reliability of outcome on big, heavy, angry animals that do not fall over politely. Everything the .4570 wins up close. It hands right back the moment the range opens up. And this is the part the energy charts will never show the man at the counter. A wide, heavy bullet is a brick in the wind. It bleeds velocity fast and falls out of the sky like a thrown anvil. A narrower, faster .3030 bullet, even wearing the blunt nose a tube magazine demands, slips through the air more efficiently and holds its line farther downrange. Put real, current numbers on it instead of barroom estimates. Hornady's own published chart for the .30-30 lever evolution, 0 to 200 yards, has the bullet 3 inches high at 100, dead on at 200, and 12.5 inches low at 300. Now take the .4570 lever evolution, the flattest factory .4570 made, a 325-grain flex tip leaving around 2,050 feet per second, and at 300 yards it has dropped roughly 27 inches, more than double the .3030's fall. That is the whole ballgame at distance. The .3030 is a true 200-yard deer rifle. The standard .4570 is a 150-yard cartridge that turns into a rainbow past that line. The ground you hunt decides which of those facts you live by. In a 100-yard lane of black timber, the .4570's drop is irrelevant, and its mass is everything. Across a 200-yard cut or a long bean field, the .3030's flatter line puts venison in the cooler while the .570's energy arcs harmlessly over the deer's back. Then there is the bill your own body pays. A .30's 30 in a 7-pound rifle generates somewhere around 11 to 14 foot-pounds of recoil, mild enough to shoot a full afternoon and never build a flinch. A standard .4570 in the same rifle runs roughly 20 to 25. Step up to the heavy 405-grain loads and you clear 30. Touch off the Buffalo Bore Plus peep and you're nearing 50 foot-pounds, squarely in .300 and .338 Magnum country. out of a lever gun that weighs nothing on a sling. And recoil is not just discomfort. Recoil is a tax on practice, and practice is the only thing that ever made a marksman. The hunter who fires 3 rounds of full-house .45 to 70 feels his shoulder go numb and racks the rifle until next season is not the hunter you want behind it when a bull steps out at 70 yards in the cold and his hands are already shaking with adrenaline. The harder-hitting cartridge is worthless if it is the cartridge you flinch with. Energy at the muzzle has never killed anything. The bullet that lands where you aimed is the only one that does. There is one more force shoving hunters toward the expensive round, and it does not come from a marketing department. It comes straight out of the statute book. Across a band of the Midwest and East, lawmakers banned bottleneck rifle cartridges for deer and locked hunters into straight-walled cases. The reasoning being that a fat, slow, straight-wall bullet falls to earth sooner and carries less far across flat, crowded farm country. Ohio opened to straight walls in 2014. Indiana followed in 2016, Iowa in 2017, West Virginia in 2018, Maryland in 2020, alongside Michigan and Illinois. In those states, the rule is blunt. A straight-walled case, roughly .357 to .50 caliber, and nothing with a shoulder. The .30C30 Winchester is a bottleneck cartridge. In Ohio, it is flatly illegal for deer. The .4570 government is a straight wall. It is legal. So for an entire region of American hunters, the cheaper, flatter, gentler round their grandfathers carried is now against the law, and the heavy, costly, hard-kicking one is a legal necessity. The hunter did not pick the premium cartridge. The map picked it for him, and the rifle industry has been delighted to sell into that map ever since. So which one is a waste of your money? It depends entirely on who is asking, and the honest answers sting both camps. The .4570 is a waste of your money if you hunt whitetail and hogs inside 200 yards in open country. You don't live under a straight wall law, and you will never face anything heavier than a big deer. In that life, you are paying double for ammunition, beating yourself out of practice, throwing a rainbow at game, a flat shooting round handles cleanly, and buying a buffalo cartridge to do a job the .3030 has done better, cheaper, and softer for 130 years. You are not buying capability. You are buying a framed photograph of a bison hunt that ended before your great-grandfather drew his first breath. The .30 is a waste of your money if you hunt elk, moose, big bear, or 300-pound hogs in close cover, or you live where the law demands a straight wall, or you mean to build a suppressed, subsonic, heavy bullet lever gun, because the .4570 will swallow a 500 grain, even a 730 grain bullet at subsonic speed, and still arrive like a falling safe, and the .3030 simply cannot follow it there. For that work, the .3030 is the cartridge that asks you to compromise, and the .4570 is the one that refuses to. But step back, because the real verdict is bigger than either round. Neither of these legends is flawed. Both are honest tools doing exactly what their physics allows, no more and no less. The waste was never the rifle. The waste is buying the story instead of the steel, paying for a 2-mile reputation you will never use, or for a flat-shooting myth in a county where the law won't let you use it. The industry would rather sell you a legend than a fact, because the legend carries the higher margin. Go back to that strip of sand at Sandy Hook in 1879. The bullet that flew 2 miles and split 3 planks was real. The reputation it built was earned. But the man who buys a .4570 today on the strength of that bullet and never once shoots past 100 yards, never reloads, never runs the +P load his rifle could actually use, has bought the ghost, not the gun. Here is something this channel does not put on a thumbnail. The first big-bore lever gun I ever carried into the timber, I bought for the legend, not for the land I actually hunted. It kicked too hard to practice with. It threw a rainbow past the only ranges I would ever shoot. And one gray morning, it cost me an animal I should have put down clean. Because I owned a cartridge, it never earned the right to shoot well. The rifle was not wrong. I was. I had bought a story, and the story does not steady your hands. That is why Huntforge exists, and that is the line drawn in the sand. If you are the kind of hunter who refuses to be sold mythology, who wants the number stamped nowhere on the box, the truth living underneath the marketing, the physics holding up the heritage, then you are already one of us. Subscribing is not a favor to this channel. It is you planting a flag that says you buy the steel, not the story. Next time, 2 cartridges go on the bench that the industry did not inherit from history. It invented them on purpose to sell you a brand new rifle for a law that never had to exist. The .350 Legend and the .450 Bushmaster. There is a number hiding behind those two as well, and once you have seen it, you will not be able to unsee it. Stay sharp. Keep the heritage honest.